Look, even though I could actually hit the broadside of a barn without a sight on my AR-15, damn sure couldn't hit anywhere on purpose, especially when you add distance. The question is, are you shooting at barns? Are you shooting at multiple targets near and far? Are you running and gunning? Are you down in the prone supported? And so on, because that will be the decision factor for iron sights versus red dots versus holographic versus prism versus magnified versus LPVO. You get the point. Let's talk AR-15 sights and optics. Hey guys, Randy here with AT3Tactical.com, and gotta tell you, today's video is going to be thick with two C's because we're hitting it all when it comes to AR-15 sights and optics. Maybe not all, but pretty much the whole damn thing. Sights are the single mission critical tool that gives your AR-15 any sense of purpose or abilities, meaning having the wrong optic for your shooting style can actually put you at a disadvantage for shooting your best. So today we've got the ultimate AR-15 sights and optics guide. Hang in there. There's a lot to take in, but I bet you'll appreciate the knowledge that you gain on the other side. So let's go. All right, there's a few big hairy concepts like parallax, focal planes, eye reliefs, height over bore, a ton about zeroing, so on and so forth. We won't get the college level class on all of them today, but to get us started, there's two buckets that your AR-15 sights and optics they'll fall into: non-magnified and magnified. Let's talk about non-magnified first, starting with my personal favorite, the irons, iron sights, backup irons, BUIS, or if you ask me, the shooting skills equalizer. So first off, let's get two of those big hairy concepts out of the way. One, height over bore. Height in inches, millimeters of the sight line above your bore line or the center line of the barrel. Why does it matter to pretty much all standard AR-15 style rifles? The buttstock sits lower, which naturally pushes your sight line down close to the bore line and strains the hell out of your neck. The solution was to raise the sights higher, like 2.5 inches or so off the bore line, meaning if I touched the target with my barrel and looked down my sights, and then I squeezed the trigger, the hole or the impact will be 2.5 inches lower than where I aimed. It's pretty much a standard height across the board for AR-15 sights and optics, minus your LPVOs and scopes. Obviously, you don't need to be that accurate at point blank, but you do need to consider that height over bore effect out to about 25 yards. Not a big deal for some who aren't shooting all up close and personal, but in cramped spaces like your home, wink wink, height over bore could actually change the entire situation. Concept number two, and it applies directly to iron sights or any firearm with a front and rear sights for that matter. Sight radius. There's a whole mathematical calculation for the principle of deflection here, but it's actually pretty easy. Try this with me. Make a rear sight post with your fingers and a front sight post with like a pen tip and hold them close together. Now find a target in your room, like a small outlet, and completely cover it with the tip of the pen. Slowly move the pen away from the rear sight and try to hold the pen, the tip of it, dead center on the target. The further away it gets, the wobblier it gets, but in this case, wobbly is your friend because that extra distance allows your eye to better pick up sensitive movements of the front sight post. Meaning if I breathe wrong, I can see my front sight post fall off target. That's sight radius. All right, so how this all plays into our iron sights? Well, for our AR-15s, it's pretty much these types of iron sights. They're adjustable rear and front, and they come in all shapes and sizes. Mounting options, metal, poly, quick deploy, blah, blah, blah. Iron sights are arguably the most reliable sight that you can put on your AR, which is probably why this type of sighting system has been around forever. More specifically, the sights that you saw on the M16A1 are pretty much the exact same sights you see today. How do they work? They're adjustable, meaning that I can adjust my point of aim to match my point of impact using elevation adjustments up front and most commonly left and right windage adjustments in the rear. Major difference between today's AR-15 iron sights and prior military versions is the tangent rear sight from back when I had one. Not sure what gets issued today, but a tangent sight not only allows for standard windage adjustments left and right, it also has preset elevation adjustments at the rear. As far as the sights themselves, almost all rear iron sights you'll find are aperture sights, meaning you're looking through a hole instead of open sights like on your BB gun. With aperture sights, our human eyes naturally want to center the front sight post in the middle of the circular picture window. A lot of them have two apertures or two circles that you can flip, a wider, easier to see through circle and a smaller, harder to see through circle. Although the larger aperture gives you a bigger, clearer view of the target as a whole, it takes more attention to detail and effort to keep the post centered in the circle, not to mention also keeping everything lined on center mass of your target. On the other hand, the smaller aperture circle is much easier for your eye to naturally line up the front sight post on your center and on target, mostly because your field of view is narrowed, meaning you got tunnel vision straight through to the target. But honestly, you really should have both for flexibility in shooting conditions. Lower vis, lower light, closer engagement, run and gun. Use that wide open aperture. Higher precision, higher vis, take your time shots, close that sucker down. So that brings us to how we use irons today. Do they only exist as a backup for all of your other optics when isht hits the fan? I look at it this way. I'd rather be stone cold confident hitting not just the broadside of the barn, but a nail or so around the nail with sights that don't have multiple failure points like batteries, fragile glass lenses, drifting reticles, or what have you. Rather than put all my eggs in one basket of a red dot, Prism, or LPVO. Problem for most when it comes to iron sights is getting them properly zeroed and then practice, practice, practice. I mean, if this is going to be our fallback sight, we better be damn proficient at it, right? Luckily, we'll have a whole nother video or series on zeroing irons on its own, but in terms of max effective range for iron sights, it's easy to just follow the military and keep it at 300 Army meters and under, which actually makes for a pretty fun competition with you and your shooting buddies with your irons at distance. It's, again, the ultimate equalizer. Hot dang, we're on to red dots or reflex sights. Between this and most holographic sights, it's going to be pretty much it for non-magnified AR-15 sights and optics, but red dots are the big one. The vast majority of standard 5.56, 223 AR owners own one or more red dot sights or plan on owning one or have owned one. Because of that, the pool of red dots is massive. So many brands, so many sizes, features, yada yada. But first, what matters most today about your red dot sight? Number one is spatial awareness. There's two parts to this. A is the distance from your eye to your optic, aka eye relief. Basically, magnified optics almost always require a fixed distance eye relief to even see through it properly. Red dots, no magnification, no change to view with different eye relief distances. Number two is I nearly get a 180-degree plus field of view by keeping both eyes open. For me, it's drilled into my core since I was a little young shooter to always close one eye, and it's been a dog to get over. But in terms of practicality and application for shorter engagements, shorter targets, just makes sense to have the largest field of view possible. Reason being, number one, I'm much faster at first seeing and identifying the target when both of my eyes are open. Two, inherently, if I ID my target faster, I'm able to engage my target faster. Since the red dot is only visible in my dominant eye, and it's seemingly kind of floating there in space, I can keep both eyes opened and focused only on my target, line up the red dot, and squeeze the trigger. To that point, I wouldn't say that anyone is really trying to quick engage or transition to targets beyond 200 yards with any real sort of accuracy, like you would at 50 to 100, without some help of maybe some magnification. But that kind of puts it into perspective on the real effective usability range for red dots. What matters about red dots number 2 today is co-witnessing. It's the entire reason for pairing red dots with iron sights. Why? Because we actually get to use our iron sights with and without the red dot assistance. There's 2 ways to do this and 3 reasons when. Maybe you already heard about absolute and lower third co-witnessing, but one is absolutely in line with your iron sight picture, so more or less the red dot tops the top of the ice cream cone. The other, set your irons in the lower third red dot sight picture, meaning I just drop my head and now I can engage my irons. All right, when do you use one or the other? Fixed iron sights that don't go anywhere, like the Ruger AR-556s, M&P-15s of the world, consider using lower thirds to keep from always having that crowded field of view in the lower part of your red dot. Flip-up irons, consider absolute co-witness, perfectly in line with your irons, to maintain that same sight picture no matter what sight I'm using, especially when my red dot battery dies. Not to mention that absolute co-witness height, or that universal 2.5 inches over the center bore line. It's actually universal for things like magnifiers and other accessories as well that you might want to add later. If you decide to lower third co-witness your red dot, you're putting on a little higher riser that puts your sight line at around 2.8 inches above height over bore. What matters most today about red dots number 3, this sneaky little thing called parallax. It's another one of those big hairy concepts we'll touch on a bit more when we get into LPVOs and scopes, but for now, almost all red dots they're pretty close to parallax free, which is why I can move my head from side to side, up and down, where as long as I can see that dot, I can hit that target. Why is that? Because red dot sights, they work on a principle of reflection or reflex, meaning a light beam is projected from the back of the sight towards and onto a curved lens that's angled just right to reflect some of that light perfectly parallel to your line of sight. There's a couple different light bouncing technologies for this, but that's more or less what's happening. The beam of light is also fixed, meaning that it doesn't move. So no matter how I orientate my AR, that beam of light still points that direction, giving me the ability to stretch the limits of my sight picture, but still mark hits. All right, let's hit on red dot types, features, what to look for. First things first, you get open red dot sights and closed red dot sight housings. Today, most open red dots, usually just called reflex sights, they'll be mini or micro, similar if not to the same you would mount on your handgun. Actually, I bet you'd have a hard time finding a larger profile, open, reflex red dot sight out there, like something you might find on COD or something, but you never know, which brings up a good point about the vast majority of red dots for AR-15s. They're going to be enclosed. That little LED light beam is naked. It's exposed to the elements, which means dirt and debris can get in there and block the open red dot sights. On the other hand, enclosing the red dots comes with a variety of benefits. Weatherproof or resistant for one, multiple lens coatings or coverings for fog proof, glare reduction, lens covers, and of course the larger field of view. The lens sizes might vary across the board. Pretty much the larger the lens, the larger your field of view. But that's a double-edged sword. It's kind of like bigger means bulkier and heavier also. Good thing is all your well-known red dots, your Holosuns, your EOTechs, your AT3 Tacticals, wink wink, most don't overdo the size of your field of view in that department and in the weight department. Those little open reflex sights, they do have a place though on AR-15 setups, mostly mounted in one of two places and mostly paired with a fixed magnified optic like your fixed prisms. We'll talk about all of those in just a second, but the thought process behind these are for quick magnified or non-magnified closer engagements when the target might be too close for my main optic and I just need to switch and shoot close. Let's talk about the red dot reticle itself. Really just a focused beam of light, and the tighter the focus, the smaller the red dot, which is where you get reticle sizes from 2 MOA and up. Let's not get too wrapped up in the terms of minute of angle, mil dot, BDC, bullet drop compensating for today, but typically the smaller the MOA, the better for rare dots, and you likely will not find one under 2. On the other end, the bigger the MOA dot, the more target it will cover up. Maybe not a huge issue if you're up close and personal, but if you want to reach out and touch something at distance, the larger dots, they might completely cover your ideal target zone. Listen, the point is there is not one to rule them all. You might perceive red or green contrast against backgrounds differently than I do. I also have astigmatism, where that single red dot of light looks like this giant blurry starburst. So for me, I'm looking at things like a circle with a dot or something easier for me to line up, center, and distinguish. Whew, we're almost done with red dots, but first, a few more notable features you'll find out there. Almost all of them, they have brightness and intensity settings, some push buttons, some spinning turret clicks type, even the little reflexive guys. The number of adjustments, it varies across the boards. A lot of red dots will be similar to the Alpha here with 11 or so settings. Why so many? Because light conditions change in every scenario. An extremely bright day will wash out your red dot setting of 3, maybe even all the way up to 8 or 9. But on the other hand, 8 or 9 will probably blind the hell out of your field of vision in lower light. To that point, night vision compatible settings, often a common marketing bullet point, but they are fitting for the purpose. No, they are not actual night vision devices, and you'd be surprised at some of the low ratings that we get because night vision didn't work. But when the last thing you want is an extremely light bright source shining directly into your light magnification equipment, directly into your eye, then these settings, they're crucial. Let's talk auto brightness features, auto awake functionality real quick. Auto brightness saves you from having to physically reach up and adjust the dot intensity if you're maneuvering through high and low light conditions. Probably not all of us, but even not having to touch it is good enough for some folks. Are there concerns with aiming dark to light or vice versa, or flashlights and whatnot? Yes. Are they valid enough to make this feature useless? Not at all. Both auto brightness and shake to wake functionalities, they do help to extend the 50,000 battery hours that most red dots claim, some with solar recharging to come to think of it actually, but will you actually see 50,000 or plus hours out of a battery? Well, next time you try to turn on your optic at the range only to find it dead from the last time that you left it on, then think back to yourself, did I actually get 5.7 years out of that battery? Probably not. That's one reason why I personally seek out things like auto awake features, because I'm forgetful as hell. And grabbing and going in the seconds that it counts, I don't need to fiddle with my settings. Quick tip on battery maintenance. A 6-pack of these little guys, typically less than 10 bucks. Good enough battery maintenance is at least having one extra when you find it dead on the range so you can swap it out. Better, swapping them out annually. Best, more than once a year might be a stretch, but if you're constantly exercising your equipment, you might want to swap more frequently so you can keep them fresh. Okay. It's going to get a whole lot easier from here now that we've covered a ton of topics that also apply to the rest of the optics here on the table. But before we get into magnified optics, we've got the holographic sights. So the million-dollar question, what are you getting for the extra cost for a holographic sight over a more traditional red dot sight? Because technology to power a laser and bounce it all around inside here to project a holographic reticle image, it costs a lot more money to make. How about, so is it then the few extra ounces on average or the bulkier footprint? Maybe it's the shorter battery life on average. Granted, it will easily go the distance of a full year or more. I'm betting folks choose holographic sights over red dots for their AR-15s because of the rugged durability, like the EOTech's housing over the housing, or the extremely small, crisp 1 MOA dot capabilities, where with red dots you only get 2 MOA. Maybe folks buy them for the often larger square or rectangle field of view. How about ultra clear viewing? Because the glass panes are flat, and they're not coated to bounce light back to your eye. Could also be this form factor. Might be way more sexier to some of you than others, and something you are familiar with from Call of Duty. Either way, those are pretty much the pros and cons of holographic sights. And today, this technology is only getting better, cheaper, more accessible. Doesn't mean it's the red dot killer, but I'd imagine that this is one area we'll continue to see all kinds of new designs, features coming out at SHOT Show. As for features and designs, you're pretty much looking at it. There are adjustments to the intensity, there's zeroing point of aim impact, some reticle colors, probably a lot more reticle options than red dots. Mounting options are the same, FDE and black color choices. It's all pretty much close to the same of what we talked about with red dots. However, EOTech and Vortex are the names to trust in the holographic space right now. I'd be wary of holographic imposters because, of course, they are out there. Holo reflective dot sights, red dot sights. Similar bodies as these, but red dots. Or optics that just throw the word holographic out there as with a very attractive price tag. Right now, we're in a period of time with this technology where if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And just like that, we've made it to Magnified Optics. This is a whole new game, whole different new set of jobs to accomplish for your shooting mission, for your shooting style. 9 times out of 10, we are using fixed magnified prisms, LPVOs, low power variable optics, red dot magnifiers, and scopes for one thing: accurately reaching out and touching something at distance. These are the right tools to make you effective past the 200, 300, 500 yards and beyond of your red dot or your iron sight's max usable effective range. Because we're now using multiple lenses to focus an image and magnify it, we're now stuck with an exaggerated effect of eye relief and parallax. Our eyes have to be perfectly aligned behind the sweet spot of your LPVO scope, magnified optic, in order for everything to align and provide a full 360 clear sight picture. Same with parallax. A slight shift of my sight picture and where I see the crosshairs does not end up being where the bullet impacts. Do you need to pull your hair out worrying about parallax? More than 80% of us AR-15 shooters, no. Unless you're really pushing the edges of where your reticle is visible, left, right, up, down, or you're not naturally correcting your sight picture when it's that far off, that slight shift in parallax that might occur at 500-600 yards, you're still going to be hitting center mass. All right, where's my military folks at? Because we're talking about fixed prism optics next, like your trusty Trijicon ACOG. These are basically fixed magnification scopes, but unlike LPVOs and actual scopes that use all sorts of lenses to magnify an image, these use prisms, just 2 prisms. We don't need to get nitty-gritty deep in the weeds on how they work, but talk about some attractive benefits with these guys. First and foremost are the reticles. Sure, they come in different colors and reticle shapes like red dots and holographics, but those two are pretty useless when the battery dies. Here, with fixed prism, we get a reticle that stays on when the battery's on or off because it's etched inside the scope on a piece of glass. Actually, your OG ACOG didn't even use a battery, but instead used a length of neon tritium that captures ambient light and then illuminates the reticle inside, so no need for batteries. On that topic of illumination, instead of your reticle being a beam of light that's pointed back into your eye, like red dots, prisms illuminate the glass window or etched window where the reticle is and gives you different intensities that you can toggle through. Maybe not as super bright as your red dots can get, which might be a little challenging in some of those high vis, high light environments, but for those like me with astigmatism, that etched reticle is way more crisp than that blurry red dot. But both are two different tools for two different jobs. Second benefit to prisms, magnification, baby. A 250 meter target just hits different with a 3x prism than your no X red dot, but double-edged sword where you're stuck with that magnification. Anywhere from 1.5 times, they come up to 5 times magnified. For some, that's exactly what the doctor ordered for varmint hunting, or those who are attracted to setups with magnified top for distance, and then an offset red dot for up close and personal engagement. Last benefit of a magnified prism optics, because there's a lot less going on inside of these versus your LPVOs, versus your scopes, you get a smaller form factor, right up there with some red dots and holographic sights. But prism glass, it costs money to make, so don't be surprised to see these fetching a little bit more than a decent red dot. Low-powered variable optics. Are they scopes? Are they red dots? Are they hybrids? They're LPVOs. Honestly, they are just scopes with a 1x no magnification setting and a max zoom out to 8, maybe 10. The majority of LPVOs will be 4 or 6x. For some AR-15 shooters, they can be a great in-between for non-magnified, faster target acquisition shooting, then zooming to a max of 4, 6, or 8 power to stare down the soul of your 300-meter paper target or deer or something else. All right, we get to talk about a new big hairy concept with LPVOs, focal planes. Obviously, being a magnified optic, LPVOs are subject to a fixed eye relief, distance from your magnification, parallax issues, but focal planes are specific to traditional scopes and LPVOs and the way our eyes react with the reticle. All right, there is a lot going on inside your basic scope LPVO, but when it comes to lenses where the work is done, there's basically six parts at play here. Number one, your objective lens pointed at your object or target. Bigger the objective lens, brighter the picture. Number two, the first focal plane, with or without reticle. Number 3 and 4 are the image flippers, the magnifiers, aka erector lenses. That's their job, flip and magnify in and out as they move back and forth in the body. Number 5 is your second focal plane, with or without reticle. And number 6 are one or more ocular lenses. We can get even deeper than that, and we will in the future, but for today, it's all about the first and second focal planes. First focal plane scopes and LPVOs. The reticle lies in the first focal plane, meaning we just said that the magnifier lenses, they're back here. So when you zoom in and out, you're zooming in and out on both the reticle and your target, meaning that they scale together equally. On the flip side, second focal plane scopes set the reticle behind those magnifying erector lenses, meaning no matter what power I zoom to, the reticle image back here does not change. Why is that important? Because both first and second focal planes aren't without their own benefits and their own challenges. Not to mention first focal plane LPVOs and scopes, they are going to cost way more for the extra attention and tolerances and precision to keep everything aligned as it zooms. Challenges for those less costly second focal plane optics. Those little hash marks or holdover marks your reticle might have, they're only accurate at a fixed magnification setting, mostly fully zoomed in. Why? Because the reticle stays this big, but your target gets bigger and smaller as you zoom, meaning your reticle hash marks that represent 1 MOA will only be 1 MOA when they're at full power. As you scale back, they could be 2, 3, 4 MOA in between. Could you do the math to get it correct? Yeah, maybe. Will it be close or reliable? Probably not. Challenges for first focal planes. Well, you don't have that holdover issue since both the target and the reticle zoom in and out at the same scale. But if you start getting into some of those higher power magnifications, that reticle might be large and in charge at full zoom, but teeny tiny at its lowest setting. For low power magnification, LPVOs up to 1 to 6 or so, maybe 1 to 8, probably not even a huge deal. But there's one more challenge, and that is cost. Yes, you will see first focal plane LPVOs in the hundreds to couple hundreds of dollars. Not saying that they don't work, but when the price jump from standard second plane LPVOs is from hundreds to thousands with an S for some brand names like Trijicon and EOTech, there's something to be said about the quality and reliability of first focal plane scopes with that price point. So why are LPVOs not scopes? I mean, they are, but the real delineation could probably be made with that 1x no magnification setting, specifically for 5.56, 223 AR-15 platforms, which purposely limits the maximum effective zooming range for a completely different job than most traditional scopes. Second is that 1x no zoom setting that allows for red dot-ish type functionality. You might be able to run and gun with both eyes open using your LPVO, but I have to tell you, even looking through this $600 Vortex Strike Eagle with both eyes open, still feels like I have a pair of someone's prescription glasses on my shooting eye. To that point of LPVO running and gunning, especially around barriers, although you won't have to worry about astigmatism like red dots because scopes have ocular lenses and like your binos, so you can solve for your crappy vision. It's definitely more tricky to run and gun with LPVO than having a red dot alone because of that whole eye relief parallax deal and keeping your head stuck right here behind the optic. Granted, when you really want to put together a meaningful tight group at 200, 300 yards, the LPVO is the tool for that increased accuracy. So what are you going to find out there for AR-15 LPVOs? A whole lot of 1x4s, 1x6s, lots of 1x8s, more and more 1x10 LPVOs, all sorts of price brackets. We already know first focal plane LPVOs will be spendy regardless, but sifting through the tiers of options at the couple $100 price point, most cases you get what you pay for. Higher quality lenses throughout, higher grades housing, materials, robust internals that can take significant recoil, even a level of warranty and support like AT3's lifetime warranty. Outside of that, the rest is really just marketing points that most LPVOs, they'll share across the board. Nitrogen filled, fog proof, water and shock resistant, yada, yada, yada. As for optics and lens sizes, here's the trick for reading the measurements. First, you have the magnification range, 1x4, 1x6, so on. Then you have the objective lens diameter, and for LPVOs, it's typically 24 or 28 millimeters. Then you might see the diameter of the tube, which will usually be about 30 millimeters for LPVOs. Let's talk quick about a couple other LPVO features that might actually sway your decision for one or the other. Turrets, reticles, brightness adjustments. For turrets, height and size is one factor because oftentimes it takes a little more room for guts that allow locking and unlocking turrets, or even just that little tactile click adjustment. The range of adjustments are probably going to all be pretty damn close, if not the same, as well as all pretty much being half MOA adjustments per click. The reticle choices and colors, those are ones to spend some extra time on. Maybe the Christmas tree for quick elevation and windage holdovers. It's actually kind of fun and challenging to dial those things in, test your limits. Maybe BDCs with holdovers specific to 5.56, 2.23, or just some crosshairs with tick marks. Whatever your flavor is, it's probably out there. All right, up next, you got your full-fledged traditional scopes. Not gonna spend a whole lot of time here because we already discussed basically all the concepts that apply to LPVOs. They also apply to scopes, just with a little more magnification. Secondly, this is the ultimate AR-15 guide, 5.56, 2.23. There's a small handful of folks who are going to opt for a scope over an LPVO, but that's specific for their mission, probably hunting or precision shooting. What's left for Magnified Optics? How about your red dot magnifier? A lot of folks are favoring this combo, myself included these days, particularly for shooting on the move, variety of different engagement distances. Of course, there are pros and cons to this setup, otherwise it'd be perfect. Cons, more lenses to maintain, additional point of gear failure, although maybe not mission critical gear. Additional bulk to your AR profile, maybe a negligible bit of weight. So although the most magnifiers are going to be fixed at 3 and 4x, you still get a solid hybrid solution that covers a lot of ground in between 10 and 250 plus yards. Other magnifier pros, flip to the side functionality. Although it does take some more muscle memory to manipulate hastily when it counts, like pulling back and flipping or pushing a button to flip, the pair will still wind up being a shorter profile lengthwise than your LPVO, which actually gives you more flexibility in setting the right eye relief distance for those of you who were maybe taught nose to the charging handle. Here's a little tip for magnifiers. You do need to zero them, but it's not the same as your primary red dot optic. Zero your red dot first, slide in your magnifier, and then use your eye's natural tendency to center things and adjust your magnifier until the dot is dead center. Done and did. As for any sort of maintenance on these, maybe the slightest dabs of oil if the hinge gets sticky, probably not though. Lens cleaning for sure. I mean, there's really not much for maintenance on any of these optics other than lenses, batteries, zeroing from now and then. But there is a mountain of general AR-15 maintenance that I'd be willing to bet almost every single one of us are behind on. I'm guilty as charged. So that's actually coming up next, right over here. It's AR-15 maintenance, inside and out, straight from the military technical manuals for the most part. Have a look. I'll see you over there.